Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 585, 585, Monday, October the 22nd, 2018. Thank you so much for tuning in. Well, Papadopoulos and his wife were on Tucker Carlson on Saturday night. Probably some of you saw that. Now the thing about Papadopoulos, if you've looked at his tweets in the past several weeks, you look at his last 2 or 3 TV appearances, he is very consistent. Very consistent. He's very direct. He doesn't hem-haw around anywhere. And he basically tells you, hey, you know, since all this has gone down with me and I've gone back and had a chance to look, you know, when these things were happening to me, I didn't know what was going on around me. I felt like there was some suspicious things going on, but I really didn't understand what was happening. But in hindsight now, looking back on it, having some time to do some research and look into this, there's no question in my mind that I was set up by intelligence agents, assets, whatever you want to call them, operatives, you pick the word. And he specifically states that they're British. And the thing about his story that's the last couple times I've seen him tell it that I think is not quite getting the play that it should is the fact that he is completely, as best he can, disagreeing with this whole idea that he told Alexander Downer, Down the Hatch Downer, about the Hillary Clinton emails. He's now stated on the last 3 interviews I've seen and in some of his tweets that he remembers that meeting, that conversation with Alexander Downer very well. He says it's very, very clear in his mind, and he cannot recall in his mind ever saying anything to Downer about Hillary Clinton emails. And that's a very, very important point, because if he's telling the truth, that means that Downer went and told someone at the embassy, the U.S. Embassy in London. He went and told them, or possibly he passed this information on to the Australian intelligence, and told them that Papadopoulos said something about the Russians having Hillary Clinton emails. But Papadopoulos is denying that. So one of these 2 guys is lying. Now, what if Papadopoulos is telling the truth? That means that Downer's lying, which means that he's way more involved in this than he's letting on. And it also means someone needs to question him. Now, obviously, Australia and the UK have both expressed concern with Trump declassifying the information that would disclose Downer or out Downer and Halper, and probably Mifsud as well, who he also believes was a British agent. So Papadopoulos says that, yeah, I mean, Halper, Downer, and Mifsud all were kind of tag teaming him. He believes they were all some sort of British intelligence assets, and that this was all happening in and around London. And he talks about how once he was notified that he was going to be part of the Trump campaign, he tells these guys, hey, it looks like I'm headed back to the States. And they said, no. We want you to go on a trip with us. And where do they take him? They take him to Link University in Italy, in Rome, which is, of course, the spy school. It's where they train Western spies, where Joseph Mifsud is a regular speaker there, an instructor. And so if you look at Papadopoulos, and again, he did plead guilty to lying to the FBI about when he had these interactions or whatever. He admits to that. There's no problem with that. But I don't think that you should automatically say, okay, well, then he must be just lying about everything. I don't really believe that. I actually believe that Papadopoulos, to the best of his ability, is telling the truth. And I think his testimony is going to be very compelling. I wish it was in front of an open hearing instead of a closed hearing. But I wish that Tucker Carlson would ask more questions about what Uncle Bob the Executioner asked Papadopoulos about, and what Papadopoulos told him. Now, Papadopoulos did volunteer to Tucker Carlson that he did tell the special counsel that he thought that these individuals, Halper, Downer, what have you, were recording him. So he clearly gave the indication that that he felt like he was being played or he was being set up or something. But it doesn't appear that Uncle Bob the executioner and his Hillary donor posse had any interest at all in pursuing that line of questioning. Not really very interested. They had something else on their mind. But as I said before, the last time he did an interview prior to this one, which I think was on Hannity, I said that I think it's real important, his testimony is real important for this investigation, because up to this point, it's pretty much stopped at the water's edge. We've been focusing on the FBI, the DOJ, possibly the intelligence community, or what have you. But they haven't really wanted to, and I imagine it's because there's certain pressures of dragging these foreign allies, such as the UK and Australia, into this thing. But you know what? If you want to get to the truth, you're going to have to bring them into this thing, because the origins of all this, even before Operation Crossfire Hurricane, before Strzok and all these other people got involved in the FBI, this stuff was going on. We know it began in late 2014. It was going on all through 2015. And so if you really want to understand Spygate and the origins of it, you cannot just simply pretend that the UK and Australia didn't have a role to play, when they certainly did play a major role. A major role. It was Halper who ratted out Michael Flynn and got the dogs onto Michael Flynn, because he too was at Cambridge in London for one of these seminars, and that's how they set him up. And they made sure to seat him next to this Russian woman. That was Halper. We know that Christopher Steele was also in attendance. These guys were all working together. This was definitely a plot that involved foreign intelligence. The British and the Australians were involved, likely put into play by Mr. Potato Head, John Brennan, who was likely running the intelligence operations. And then, with his 6-agency task force, he brought the intelligence together with the FBI and brought it all together, because the CIA cannot get FISA warrants. The CIA does not conduct domestic investigations or investigations within the U.S. on U.S. persons. So he had to bring them in. But the origins of all this, as I have said many times, began with intelligence, with the CIA and their friends across the pond, the UK. And then, of course, they brought Mr. Downer from Australia into it, because, quite honestly, I think what was supposed to happen is Mifsud was supposed to feed Papadopoulos this Russians have Hillary's emails, and Halper was supposed to be the guy that he dumped it on. But as we know, Papadopoulos, when he found himself at that dinner with Halper and his assistant, he smelled a rat. He started feeling uncomfortable. And then Halper started pressing him, at which point Papadopoulos just shut up and he didn't say anything. So Halper was supposed to get this information out of Papadopoulos, which Misfit had planted. Misfit planted the information. Halper was supposed to extract it. But Papadopoulos didn't play along, for whatever reasons. So it threw a wrench in their spokes, which is probably why they brought Downer into it. They probably, he's part of Hakelud, he's part of, which is another one of these private intelligence firms, which are all connected to British intelligence, U.S. intelligence, and they probably said, uh-oh, we got a problem. Papadopoulos spit the bit. But it's our job to make sure that he drops the Russians have Hillary Clinton emails, which we planted in him with Mifsud. But he spit the bit with Halper. So Halper probably had to call Downer and say, hey, man, I'm in a bit of a jam. I was supposed to get this guy that we're working on, Papadopoulos, I was supposed to get some information out of him, which we planted into him, and he spit the bit. He obviously smelled a rat, whatever. It didn't work out. So I need you to help me out here. And again, as I said in the previous video, I honestly believe that they told Downer, look, just go sit down and talk to him about anything. We don't care. Talk to him about foreign policy, talk to him about energy, talk to him about anything you want. It really doesn't matter what you talk to him about. Just make sure that once you're done talking to him, that you go over to the U.S. Embassy in London and tell them that Papadopoulos told you about Russian emails. We know we planted it with him, so we know he's got the information. You just need to go tell him that he gave it to you. So that's what I think happened, because I don't think Papadopoulos would lie. I think Papadopoulos, if he told Alexander Down the Hatch Downer about that, he would admit to it. He has no reason to lie about that, really. Okay, so I think that's exactly what happened. I think that Downer, that Papadopoulos probably never did say anything to him about that, but at that point, it really threw a wrench in the spokes because they really needed that. That was something they were really counting on, was to get that information out of Papadopoulos. So there was no need for Downer to have to sit there and drag it out of him. All Downer had to do was simply say that Papadopoulos told him that. Then it's going to be Papadopoulos' word against Downer's word. And whose word are they going to take? This experienced diplomat with all his credentials? And why would he just pull that out of thin air and make it up? Why would he? It must be Papadopoulos that's lying. After all, he's admitted to lying already once to the FBI already. Not just once, but I think it was 4 times. So they really had Papadopoulos in a pinch there, and they knew that they just needed Downer to have the meeting. That's all that needed to happen. Just have the meeting and then go say Papadopoulos said this, even if he didn't. I think that's exactly what happened. And I think that that's the angle that Papadopoulos is going to play when he gives his testimony this coming week behind closed doors. And we should certainly get to see the transcript of that. But the reason that I said, as I say again, as I did before, why the Papadopoulos information is so important is because once Papadopoulos gives his testimony, if you believe him and you look at all the evidence to support what he's saying, then you can no longer pretend and try to hide and cover up that there was foreign intelligence assets and agencies involved in the frame-up. And when you start looking at the foreign intelligence, you know that they couldn't have been put into action without getting the okay or the clearance or the go-ahead or being told or being recruited by the CIA, which will be John Brennan, Mr. Potato Head. The British intelligence and Australian intelligence would never have gotten involved in this plot without the permission or being told or asked to help out with this situation. So this is really important, and why I think that we need to focus on this, and why I hope they do focus on it in Congress, because this will open up another part of the conversation that for a lot of people, even it seems like these Republicans and people investigating, they don't seem to want to go into the foreign intelligence things that were going on, but they're simply not going to be able to avoid it because it's too critical to this overall story. And of course, Christopher Steele, the guy they say is the author of the dossier, he himself a Brit. And so much of this stuff was going on. It was going on in the UK, in London. It was happening there in Italy, also Israel. So there was a lot of foreign intelligence, a lot of foreign stuff going on. We know about Mr. Greenberg, the Russian agent who tried to get Roger Stone and Michael Caputo to bite on something. He's a well-known Russian, and a foreign agent. So there's a lot of this type of stuff going on, and to fully understand Spygate, to get to the origins of it, and to truly unravel the plot, you cannot do that without understanding the role that was of the UK, of the Australians, the foreign intelligence, the role they played in the overall frame-up. This was a global operation, not just an FBI operation. Much, much, much more to it than that. And that's why Papadopoulos' testimony is so important, because it opens the door to the foreign intelligence, and that couldn't happen without the CIA and Mr. Potato Head. Well, this strange story came out yesterday about Spartacus, Cory Booker. This story is really strange because it is a story. It's an allegation that's being made by a gay man who's saying that Cory Booker sexually assaulted him in a restroom. And he gives very good details about this. I'm not going to go into it now. It's just not something I enjoy talking about. But it was more than just a verbal accusation. Let's put it this way. It involved Cory Booker placing his hands on this individual as well as the verbal part of it. And he apparently accosted him in a bathroom. And this apparently took place at a convention where Booker was speaking. And I think it was like an LGBTQ type function of some sort. Now, what surprised me about this is I did not know that Cory Booker was homosexual or bisexual or transsexual with a kickstand. I don't really know what his sexual leanings are, and quite honestly, I really don't care. It just, I didn't know this. I thought Cory Booker was straight. But apparently he's either gay or bi or something, and this individual's making the allegations, and he appears to be pretty credible. He has published the very letter that he has sent to various people to get this out there. So it'll be interesting to watch in the next few days to come how Cory Booker handles this accusation by this gay man alleging that Booker sexually assaulted him in a restroom. My. Martha McSally has now taken the lead in the Arizona race solidly, just a slight lead, 48-46. How it's that close, I don't even know. I mean, there's such a, I mean, this nut she's running against. I just don't see how anyone in Arizona could look at that woman and support her, especially when you compare her to, you know, Martha McSally, who's a legitimate, you know, first female fighter pilot to fly combat missions. She's solid. She's intelligent. She's got a really nice personality, very, you know, smiling, happy all the time, very positive. The type of person you like to be around. She would be a very valuable asset to the Senate. She's a strong supporter of Trump's agenda. It's just really hard to believe that her opponent is even this close. I think she's going to pull away. Of course, this is a little bump she got from Trump being in Arizona. I imagine, and then we should see some more polling this week, particularly in Arizona, because there's a couple important races going on there. In fact, I think the polling will pick up a little bit. It's really hard to tell, though. There's so much rigging and fixing and gaslighting going on with the polls. It's really hard to say. Again, I'm making my prediction on the midterms based on what I can really see. Because what are polls really? Polls are designed to tell us what people are thinking and how they might vote based on how they're thinking. But do we really need a poll to tell us that? It's like in 2016, the reason I said I thought Trump would win, you know, 3 weeks out from the election. I was looking at the crowds he was drawing. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. How can they be telling us that the rotten Reverend Clinton is going to blow him away when she can't hardly fill up a high school gymnasium, and this guy's packing in literally 10, 20, 30,000 people night after night after night. It seems like all the energy and enthusiasm and the numbers are with him. If these people will drive, get in their car and drive an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, my sister and brother-in-law will drive 4 hours to go to a Trump rally. They've been to half a dozen of them at least. They'll drive to Michigan, Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, anywhere they can get to within 4 hours to go see Trump, they'll go. You see a lot of these people making long trips. They stand on long lines. A lot of them know they won't even get in the venue. They just want to be outside where it's happening. We saw this in 2016. I mean, what do your eyes tell you? Your eyes tell you that the energy and enthusiasm and support is with Trump. Is there a national Democrat traveling around the country right now? Is it the rotten Reverend Clinton? Is it Barack Hussein Obama? Is it Michelle Obama? Is it Joe Biden? Are any of these people able to go out and command the type of crowd that Trump can? No, not even close. Not even close. And if all these people did all this back in 2016 and Trump was able to win, and then you look at, and that's without having any record to run on, and now you look at the record that he has to run on, which is a very, very good one with the economy and everything else, and then you have a clear distinction between him and Commie-Crats, and you know what they're all about, which is resist. Resist, sanctuary cities, open the borders, eliminate ICE, harass people who are Republicans or what have you. I mean, what in the world reason am I supposed to sit here and say, yeah, I think the Democrats are going to do pretty well. Yeah, I think they're going to maybe gain the House. Maybe they're going to hold on to seats. I mean, what would be the justification of I cannot find, as a rational person, a reason to justify that opinion. The only thing I can do is say, wow, Trump's had a very successful 2 years. He's done everything he said he would do to the best of his ability. He's been very, very successful. He's got a great economy. Look at the situation with his foreign policy. It's the best I've seen by any president in my lifetime. All the accomplishments. Look at the crowds. They're big, if not bigger, and more enthusiastic than they were in 2016. So why am I supposed to believe that that the Republicans and Trump are going to have a down midterm? Everything tells me what I see with my eyes and my common sense that it's going to be a very strong midterm, which is going to be out of the ordinary. It's going to be something extraordinary because they're going to have a very high voter turnout in a midterm, in a president's first midterm, which is pretty rare. But everything I can see tells me that's what's going to happen. And what do I see on the Democrat side? Yeah, the Democrats could probably have pretty high turnout amongst that 10, 20, whatever percent it is of the radical leftists who are really supercharged to go vote against Trump. But how about the Latino? How about the blacks? More and more of them are supporting Trump. How about the white suburban middle class? Or it could be anybody in the middle class, blacks, Latinos, whites, whatever. What is it that would motivate them to go out and vote for a bunch of Democrats? What are the Democrats offering? Resistance. Sanctuary cities, eliminate ICE, let the borders open, let the 10,000 person caravan just come across the border and start voting Democrat. I mean, it defies logic. The only way that you could predict the Democrats are going to have a good midterm is if, in fact, you believe that at least half, if not more than half, the country is insane. And they're not. They're not. And that is the reason that I made the midterm prediction I did, which is that we will pick up 57, we will have, when the smoke clears, we'll have 57 seats in the Senate, and we'll have 222 House seats. And I'm sticking with that until something happens that would change my mind. But right now, that's what I'm sticking with, and it's not based on so much polling, although I'm looking at polling like everyone else. I'm trying to look at aggregate polling, but basically it's what I see with my eyes and what I feel and things going on around me that I can see. And it all looks like that the Republicans are going to be successful in the midterms, and that the Democrats are going to suffer a fairly serious belly blow right to the solar plexus. And they're going to go crazy, and we're going to have a hell of a time laughing at them on the day after. Yes, we are. Trump is, of course, promising maximum penalties for anyone caught in voter fraud. Now, this is something we haven't talked much about. I read this about 3-4 months ago. I don't know if it came up in a TowerGate video or not, but just in case, it may have, but in case it did not, I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but Trump put together a special task force about 3 or 4 months ago to watch for election meddling, tampering, cheating, whatever. It could be the Russians, the Chinese, the Democrats, could be anybody. Illegals voting, this type of thing. So he's got a special task force, which I understand is made up of multiple agencies of the government. There's like 9 or 10 different agencies, and there's like 400 people on this task force, plus they have other individuals working for them. So I'm not sure the actual number, but there's quite a force that Trump has put together to make sure that there's no funny business going on in these midterm elections. And he's, of course, saying that anyone caught in this voter fraud is going to face serious consequences. So he's taking it very seriously for people who try to cheat in these elections, and he does have a special task force that's looking at this and watching it very closely. I've been kind of watching, of course, as Trudeau in Canada and Macron in France continue tanking. You know, back when they won their elections, of course, most of us were rooting for Le Pen. We were rooting for someone else in Canada, anybody but Trudeau. But these are the two guys that won. And I think most of us knew that Trudeau and Macron were lightweights, were in way over their head, and their solutions to the problems that they face in Canada, as well as particularly in Europe, they were not going to have the solutions to those problems. And I predicted it was going to go very, very badly for both Macron and Trudeau. And Trudeau has badly handled the trade negotiations, as well as other things. So there we have Trudeau and Macron badly tanking. Both of them have disapproval ratings of over 50%. Over 50%. So their fortunes are changing rapidly. It's going to be interesting to watch and see what the recoil is as a result of this, and whether or not this leads to actually seeing real populist type conservative or what have you type candidates gaining steam, and parties as well gaining steam in France and in Canada as well as other places. Two polls out in the last couple of days on John Cox out in California. As you know, I said I hope he wins, but I don't think he will. I do believe that he will lose, but in a much closer race than people are thinking. And I also have said that I think after 2 years, I think that there will be a recall election, and they will recall the crazy man from Sanctuary City, San Francisco, Gavin Newsom. I think he will be recalled after 2 years, and they'll have a recall election in California. That's my feelings on that. But these last two polls, particularly this one, is a California-wide poll done by NBC, landline poll. So, you know, you get a lot of senior citizens and kind of flawed. I don't really pay too much attention to that. But you have two polls that both have Cox closing to within 8 points. And that's a pretty good move, because a month ago it was like 17, 18, 20 points. But Cox is now closed, and has a lot to do with this gasoline tax that they have going on out in California. That's driving a lot of people out there. But this one poll from KFI NBC that was just taken a day or two ago has John Cox down just 7.4%, so just a little under 8%. There's another poll that has him around 8.5%. So there's 2 points. It's got him roughly 7.5 and 8.5 behind Newsom with 3 weeks to go. And you know, if I'm wrong about that, I'll be very happy. If John Cox pulls this off, talk about a meltdown. You see John Cox win in California, that will be the biggest story of the election, hands down. Even if the Republicans pick up 7 seats in the Senate and hold the House, if John Cox wins in California, that will be a earthquake. That will be a monumental deal, and it will have a tremendous psychological effect on the Democratic Party, and it will probably lead to, I would think, if the Republicans hold both houses and John Cox wins in California, you will see a complete, absolute meltdown. Not only that, what you'll see immediately afterwards will be an immediate call by Democrats, people in the Commie-Crat Party, for the end, for these people to resign. I mean the leadership, Rotten Reverend Clinton, Pelosi, Schumer, all these people, turn in your guns, Mr. and Mrs. America Feinstein. There'll be a mass call within the Democratic Party for these people to step down, to leave, to go. If they lose both houses and they lose California as well, that will be the end of a lot of these career Democrats' political careers. They'll be done, because they'll be just incredible backlash against them. It's probably unprecedented from anything we've seen. Yeah, it's funny. Trump was out speaking to that massive crowd in Nevada, and I think he had like 20,000 people. Not to mention how many were outside. Joe Biden was actually speaking at a union hall in Las Vegas, which is rich in Democrats. I mean, he should have had a full house. But it appears that he was there campaigning for Jackie Rosen. It appears that Biden could only draw about 200 people. So here we have Biden out there campaigning for Jackie Rosen. He draws 200. Trump is in a much smaller populous city in Nevada, and he draws 20,000. And Joe Biden is supposed to be the top tier, the number one choice for Democrats in 2020. That's how bad it is for the Commie-Crats. They are literally a party in disarray, a party that's completely out of it, man. Just out of it. And they don't even realize it. They think there's a blue wave coming. Oh my God, you almost want to feel sorry for them. Not. Let's just go back about a year, about 2 years in history, back to October the 20th of 2016. Just about 3 weeks before the November 2016 elections. Let's not forget that the New York Times ran a big story, and basically the headline of their story was that the Rotten Reverend Clinton was a 92% chance of winning the 2016 election. That was just 3 weeks before the election. 92% is what the New York Times told us Hillary's odds were. 92%. So much for polling, right? Now, that was a gaslighting poll, obviously, and a gaslighting story. And there's many of them going on right now. They're weaponizing polls. It's all they can do. And then, of course, everybody's focusing right now on this Caravan, wondering what kind of an operation it was. Well, obviously, it was a Soros operation, because let's take a look at two things. When are they estimating that this Caravan is going to, which, by the way, is over 7,000 people now, probably will gain more people. When do they expect that these people are going to approach the U.S.-Mexico border? Somewhere within a few days prior to the 2018 midterm. Because they wanted to use this, again, as a political tool. They wanted to see kids being separated from their parents to be able to run that whole game again, hoping as a last ditch that they could move the needle in the 2018 midterm. But it's going to backfire badly, badly, badly on them. First of all, we don't know what the Mexican police are going to do, but at this point, it looks like they're letting this Caravan continue. They're not using physical force to stop them. They're showing a large police presence, but they're really not taking too many steps to stop them. And so these Guatemalan and refugees from other places continue moving toward the border, but it's going to backfire badly on them because Trump's already said, hey, they're not going to get their foot onto U.S. soil. We're going to stop that. I'll send the military if I have to. And he will. And if he does, this will be a huge political victory for Trump. People love seeing something like that. This will really, and it will drive the Democrats nuts. If you think they've been unhinged before, wait till Trump sends the military to the border to stop the Caravan. Then you'll see them come even more unhinged just before the election. Now, how do we know that this was a Soros operation? And that this is all a rigged deal? Yes, I know we're all being called conspiracy theorists when we talk about this, but let's look at, there were many, probably 12 stories. I don't have time to go through them all, but just let me point out a few stories that popped up just days before they started reporting on this Caravan. On October the 11th, we had The Hill run a story with the title, Dems Struggle to Mobilize Latinos for Midterm Elections. Dems struggle to mobilize Latinos for midterm elections. That was October 11th. Then, 2 days later, October 13th, Politico writes a story, we've got a Latino problem. Can they fix it in time? Then, the next day, October 14th, NBC News, Democrats need Latino voters, but fret too many will skip the midterms. Then the very next day, CNN, October 15th, Democrats fret midterm turnout in key House districts. And the story is about how they don't see big turnout for Latinos. And this was just 4 of the many articles. It's almost like someone put out a call and said, okay, everybody in the left-wing media write stories about how we're not looking good with the Latino voters and that the Democrats really need to focus on that. Because it was just literally in a week's time, we had all these stories coming out about how Latinos, how they weren't charged up to vote. Now, as we know, we have seen that Trump has tripled his support amongst Latinos since he was elected president. Today he has almost 3 times the support he had in 2016. That should give them concern, right? But obviously they want to activate their left-wing, what they feel is their left-wing Latino base. So we get all these stories for about a week, dozens of stories just like the ones I just read, and then all of a sudden we get the Caravan. Clearly, and the timing of the Caravan, well, it should arrive just before the midterms. Again, this is just more of the dirty tricks of George Soros and his friends, the Rotten Reverend Clinton and all his buddies, Mr. Steyer, Warren Buffett, Mr. Bloomberg, the whole 9 yards. They will do anything to win. Absolutely anything. Absolutely anything. But we'll keep our eye on the ball, and like I'm telling you, if those folks, that Caravan arrives at the border 2 or 3 days before the midterms, Trump will send the military down there. They won't even get to step foot on U.S. soil. And it will be a huge win for Trump And you think the Democrats are going to get whacked now? Wait till that blows up in their face. And the fallout from that will be unprecedented. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. You guys have a good night. Appreciate it.